elapsed, and we come to the third oral question. Lord Holmes of Richmond.
My Lords, I beg to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper and declare my interest as set out in the register.
The Minister, Lord Agnew of Alton.
My Lords, the Government welcomed the Khalifa review of UK FinTech. The Chancellor has recently set out the Government's response at UK FinTech Week. This includes plans to take forward a regulatory scale box for growing firms, government support for an industry-led centre for finance, innovation and technology, improvements to tech visas to attract global talent, and plans to make the UK a more attractive location for public listings.
Lord Holmes.
My Lords, FinTech has a critical role to play in our COVID recovery, a critical role to play in enabling financial inclusion, and a critical role to play in levelling up, not least through the nations and regions FinTech clusters. Would my noble friend the Minister agree, and what's the Government's plan to make these criticalities a reality?
My Lords, the Government recognises the importance of FinTech in our economy, and indeed that needs to flow through to the curriculum. We have extended the numbers of pupils studying computer science at A-level, for example, and in the Cabinet Office, my role as overseeing the Government Digital Service, I have pushed them out to Bristol and Manchester to engage much more closely with FE and HE in those cities. But my noble friend is absolutely right. It is something of continual focus that's needed.
Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle.
My Lords, the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the UK FinTech Week conference said the government would, quote, push the boundaries of digital finance, end quote. Would the noble Lord the Minister acknowledge that there's a risk that in cheerleading the latest technology, the government fails to count the costs, both the obvious environmental costs, with Bitcoin climate emissions the equivalent of the whole nation of Norway, and the dangers to the security of our real economy and lives of runaway financial innovation, as the world experienced but seems to be at risk of forgetting in 2007-2008?
My Lords, the Government absolutely recognises the risk of a financially weak system. We learned important lessons 12 years ago, and I believe those lessons are very much in part of our institutional memory.
Lord Sharp of Epsom.
My Lords, I refer to my interests as set out in the register. Can I ask my noble friend the Minister if the Treasury has given any consideration to the specific recommendation to amend the EIS, SEIS and VCT rules to make it easier to attract investment into these startups and to retain the tax reliefs when the business models evolve into more regulated activities? It would cost the Treasury very little but unlock a potentially substantial amount of capital.
My noble friend raises important points. These matters are always under discussion in the Treasury. I think it is important, though, to stress that there is a large amount of capital out there to support early-stage businesses. We see that in the valuations that these businesses are achieving, even at an early stage. However, we will keep it under review.
Lord St John of Bletsoe.
My Lords, whilst it's encouraging to see the commitment of the Chancellor to the scale-up visa scheme, what is the government doing to ensure that our education system is updated to bring financial skills, digital skills and business skills in order to encourage the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators?
My Lord, as I touched on in an earlier question, we absolutely recognise how important it is to get our young people infused in this important future industry. And I referred to computer science. We will certainly be able to, we are certainly looking at increasing the number of maths teachers so that the children at an early age can be more infused. I am hoping to meet the Israeli ambassador shortly to understand more about their maximum program in Israel, which gets 14-year-olds involved in a career in cybersecurity.
Lord Davis of Brixton.
My Lords, this is an important report laying down the way to go in this area of work, but what I find lacking is consideration of how this is going to affect the consumer of financial services. It's important not to fall into stereotypes, but there is a real problem with digital exclusion of some consumers across all sections of our society. Will the Noble Minister assure the House that, hand in hand with the development of financial technology, consideration will be given to ensuring the widest possible share of the benefits by consumers?
The Noble Lord is right. We don't want to see citizens excluded from the digital world into which we are heading, and that is a matter of under continual consideration. But I think it's also worth stressing that as a country we are very much innovators, and our consumers are keen for the sort of products that are coming out. For example, 2.5 million UK consumers and businesses now use open banking enabled products, and we were the first country in 2018 to develop open banking standards.
Baroness Kramer.
Scale up for our fintech sector requires access to international markets. The government overlooked this in Brexit negotiations, and equivalence from the EU now looks unobtainable. Fintech is problematic in trade negotiations with the US because the UK industry risks being swamped. How will this government deliver access for fintech to major and key international markets?
My Lords, the DIT, Department of International Trade, has just announced two initiatives which I hope will help the Noble Baroness's concerns. A new fintech cohort within the DIT Export Academy initiative to provide bespoke one-to-one advice to eligible UK fintechs who are ready to scale into key markets, and a DIT-led fintech champion scheme to promote UK fintech overseas and to support UK fintechs grow internationally through mentoring and peer-to-peer learning.
Lord Moylan.
My Lords, fintech has much to offer, and I'm pleased that when I was on the board, Transport for London united its huge customer base with the banks in order to deliver and introduce contactless payment to this country, well ahead, it might be said, of the United States. But finance remains a risky business. Will my noble friend agree that we should not be led astray by the glitz of the new, that the underlying financial transactions are broadly what they always were, and that the financial risks, particular and systemic, remain essentially the same?
My noble friend is right that finance is an inherently risky business. My great+3 grandfather and his two brothers founded Close Brothers, so risk is certainly in my genes. But I think that's one of the reasons that we are introducing the sandbox concept, where this technology can be tested in a safe environment without exposing the economy to any risk.
Lord Tunnicliffe.
My Lords, in the Chancellor's recent written statement on fintech, he speaks of scale-up visas. To qualify for a fast-track visa without the need for sponsorship or third-party endorsement. What criteria was used to select fintech for this particular fast track? And where else in the economy is it envisaged that scale-up visas will be introduced?
My Lords, these concepts are still being designed, and so I'm very happy to update the Noble Lord when more information is available, but the key emphasis is to scale up to attract global talent and to boost the fintech workforce. So it will very much be focused on the skills that these people can offer our country.
Lord Billy Moria.
Of which I'm President, welcomes the recommendation set out in my friend Ron Khalifa's FinTech Review to ensure the UK's position as the best place in the world to start and grow a FinTech business. Would the government agree that having a proportionate, innovation-friendly regulatory framework will help support economic growth, facilitate access to global markets, and enhance competition? And does the government agree with the Review's recommendation of the creation of a Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology?
My Lords, we certainly are keen to support the creation of the Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology. At UK FinTech Week, the Chancellor announced his support for industry, and we certainly recognise the potential for a private sector-led Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology as an accelerator for FinTech sector growth. It can achieve this through research, thought leadership, and working with regional FinTech hubs and national FinTech bodies. The government is committed to working with industry to make this a reality.
Lord Flight.
My Lords, the government has welcomed the recommendations of the Khalifa review, as we've just heard, and it has diagnosed ingredients that have led to the UK economy blossoming over the last decade, especially the SME sector. Their diagnosis includes the EIS, where I have been chairman of the EIS Association over the last decade. The UK is recognised as the best place to start and scale up a business. What aspects of the findings of the Khalifa report do the government view as the most important?
I gave the noble lords a sense of the key ones in my opening answer, but there are several others which I will let the my noble friend be aware of. For example, a task force led by the Treasury and the Bank of England to coordinate the exploration of a potential UK central bank digital currency, a new Bank of England account type that will allow innovative financial market infrastructures to provide enhanced wholesale payment and settlements, and indeed I refer to the DIT initiatives that I mentioned earlier.
My Lords, the time allowed for this question has